Why is the government refusing to release any samples of the rubble from Building 7 for forensic analysis? Now, this has happened multiple times, in case some of you aren't aware. Building 7 was the third building that collapsed into its own footprint on 9/11, 2001. And Building 7 also was never hit by a plane. It collapsed completely on its own later on in the day. Now, there are many, many things that have been going on since then, but it has been since found through multiple studies that Building 7 could very well be the proverbial smoking gun. There's a lot of other things going on behind this. Now, also, the next question is, just about the time that Professor Leroy Halsey finished his forensic analysis of Building 7 that took 4 years with his team at the University of Alaska Fairbanks, just about that time when it was officially released is also when the defense team, almost exactly the same time, had asked for samples of the rubble of Building 7 for their own forensic analysis. And each time they were refused. In fact, the government response was, you will not get even one single speck of the many millions of tons of rubble from 9/11. You have all you need. In other words, from the NIST report. In the meantime, Professor Halsey, who had conducted his study as an architect and engineer, the entire team that was there, also was not able to obtain samples of the rubble for his forensic study. Why is that? He was refused. That's what we're going to go over today. I was just interviewed by Andy Steele from AE911truth.org. They are the group that actually funded the study for Professor Leroy Halsey at the University of Alaska. And they are a group, a nonprofit of all different types of architects and engineers. In fact, 3,700 licensed architects and engineers had peer-reviewed Professor Halsey's study of the analytics and the forensic analysis of Building 7 and put their name behind it. And they are absolutely refuting, believing, stating that the NIST report is correct. They have been constantly trying to get the NIST to be able to answer their many questions, which just doesn't follow the science and what they've been doing. But I digress. That's a story in and of itself. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, I'm bringing you over here as I do every single time for all of you to please fact check everything I tell you. Everything can be fact checked mostly on this website. If it is otherwise, I will provide to you the link. But please become very familiar with the Office of Military Commission's website, mc.mil/home.aspx. I will put this in to the description bar. This will have anything and everything you need to know about what is going on at GTMO, the calendar, the transcripts, active cases, where you can go to the viewing sites, and so on. So this is the place to go. Now, I also want to bring you over to the calendar, which for this month was supposed to be for KSM et al., which is the 9/11 cases at GTMO, which was again for the month of July 2023 canceled. You can see this on the calendar throughout. The rest of the trials for the remaining part of the month is still on. Same thing with August, except for 1 week of a 2-week trial that is going on in August. That is the Hadi trial. There's still 1 week left in that. That is going to be available, and also the 2 other trials in August are still on. But the 9/11 trial is the one that has been continually canceled, and I promised you this month, as I'm covering these trials, I was going to explain to you why. I was going to explain why. And it's about time everybody understood what's really going on behind the scenes. Okay, here we go. This is the C-Vine website, c-vine.com, c-vine.com. You can go here to find out anything and everything you need to know about GTMO and what's going on there. Community C-Vine stands for Community Voices, Investigations, News, and Education. So this is where you go here. We ask that if you are so inclined, because we are going to be spending the majority of the month of August in Fort Meade to watch the GTMO trials. And from there, we are going to discuss exactly what it is we see. Since we have to travel there to Fort Meade, we do not have big corporations backing us. So we do ask you to go ahead and donate to help us with our travel expenses. Okay, I'm going to be moving over to the video where I was just interviewed by ae911truth.org by Andy Steele. I'm just going to let this run, but this is something you want to pay attention to because it brings everything together and answering a lot of the questions that I just asked you.
The views expressed on this show by guests and the host on issues outside of the 9/11 controlled demolition evidence are the opinions of those individuals alone and do not necessarily reflect those of architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth.
Welcome to another episode of 9/11 Freefall. I am the host, Andy Steele, and I have a very interesting guest tonight. I've been watching some of her work, been watching other interviews with her, and she definitely has some information to bring to the table regarding what is going on there at Guantanamo Bay. A lot of us have taken our eye off the ball on that issue. We focus, of course, here at AE 9/11 Truth on the controlled demolitions of the 3 towers in New York on that day, but there is a lot of interesting stuff going on, and the fact that these trials are still going on, if they've even begun at all. I don't focus a lot on that, but she's going to fill in those gaps for me and for the rest of us tonight, and I think everybody should be checking out her website. First of all, her name is Linda Forsythe. She's a journalist, and she is the founder of C-Vine. This is a reporting organization, consists of volunteers, and they're zeroing in largely on the 9/11 military tribunals. We're going to be learning more about her and her group today, and we're going to get some revealing information about what's going on down there in Cuba. But let's first go ahead and bring her on. Linda, welcome to 9/11 Freefall.
Well, hello. Thank you for inviting me.
It is an honor, and you were recommended to me by a board member, and I hadn't been following very closely. And so in prepping for this, it was like I went on some kind of odyssey down in yet another rabbit hole in the 9/11 research universe. And some of the things that you have brought up, I think our audience definitely needs to hear. It even relates to our mission regarding the collapse, quote unquote, but the fall of the 3 towers in New York on September 11th. So let's just get into it. And I'm going to give you as much breadth as you want today to present your findings. But some members of our audience may be familiar with your show. Some may not be. Tell us about your work and your journalistic background.
All right. Well, first off, I'm just a citizen journalist. I haven't gone to school to become a journalist. It was just a matter of developing a website that reported the news that was filled with our citizens. So we have a number of retired police officers. We've got licensed investigators, attorneys, architects, engineers, doctors, the person next door. We just all work together to do our fact checking, our sleuthing, and looking through things. And we were lucky enough to be able to be invited to the public viewing room, which many people don't even know exists, in Fort Meade, that live streams via CCTV with a 40-second delay all of the trials, or pre-trials, I should say, from Guantanamo Bay. And so anybody can go there. You just go on base with your ID, and they have this special room, but nobody is aware of it. We and our volunteers spent all of 2019 at that time when it first started. President Trump at the time is the one that opened this up. I thought was rather interesting for the public to be able to watch what was going on in Guantanamo Bay, in Gitmo. And I found that fascinating since it was starting in January of 2019, and I now know why he did that. I don't know if
Well,
you're
I'm sure the military establishment appreciated him doing that as much as they've appreciated everything that he's been doing. But how did you get into 9/11? I mean, I want to hear about the layout down there and everything. But what got you focused in on this subject?
Well, of course, myself, like most people, remember that fateful day. It was a horrible, horrible day. And when we were told that one of the trials there, they abbreviate it by calling it KSM et al. It's the 9/11 trial, stands for Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. And then 4 others. They're trying 5 at once. How I got into it is those were one of the trials that were showing in Guantanamo at Fort Meade via CCTV. And so because I don't have any background, I at that time just wanted to focus on one and learn about it. And so that's how it started. And I became absolutely fascinated by many things that came out that people do not know about because it's so quiet and benign and mundane. And frankly, if you just sat back and just listened to the trials, you'd fall asleep because they're pre-trials. They're going through basic housekeeping of what's going to happen if it ever goes to tribunal. But when I was studying what has been happening over the years and why it's been taking this long, a lot of things started to open up. And so that's where we got our investigative team, and we really started to take a deep dive. It came up with a lot of interesting things, and there seems to be almost a playbook of typical things that it got to be, you could tell in advance what was predictable is the word I'm looking for. It got to be predictable what was going to happen. As soon as something would open up in the trial, you think, oh my gosh, now something's going to come out. A judge would have a detached retina. And so they were, couldn't have a trial for a while. Or, something was constantly happening for delays. And it always was a good reason, 20 years worth of good reasons, and we're still going on, and it's still in pretrial. But I was asking you a question, Andy. I asked you if you were a father.
No, just to a little dog, but not biologically there. So
well,
no
maybe
kids
that's
yet.
something that is still fits. The reason I was asking that is because those of us who have been parents, we have a child running around playing, giggling, having fun, noisy, and then all of a sudden they're really quiet. Okay, and so it's like, okay, there's something going on there, and it's enough that silence is kind of giving you a red flag. So you go and check it out. That's what's going on at Gitmo. It's quiet. It's mundane. It's benign. But when you start looking beneath the surface, which does come out. It's public access of what you see, and you start connecting the dots. It became very clear where this was going, what was going to happen, and sure enough, that's exactly what did happen. And that's part of what I was going to talk to you about. This is the history that leads up to the Canistro report, because Canistro, I think it was more or less a complete absolute situation of being fed up. And I was told, because he's the one that did the report, I was told by the Office of Military Commissions that that was a classified leak. They don't say it's classified, but I was told specifically that was a classified leak. So I don't know what they're going to do a play with that. Now that's going to stretch everything out. But since it's gone out now into the mainstream news, now people are starting to pay attention. Whereas if he hadn't done that, still be oblivious.
Well, they probably want to keep it quiet. I mean, I'm speculating here, but leaks are a sign of dissension within the ranks, and they don't want to show that there are any dissension. So they probably let some things go, and they don't say that it was classified or whatnot. But thank God that some people are starting to now get fed up. I'm not saying that you have the mainstream media out there questioning whether the buildings were controlled demolitions or not, but they're starting to dip their toe in the water. They're starting to look at certain things like what did the CIA know before 9/11, the FBI, all of that. And thank God for what you're doing. I mean, so many people in the alternative media follow the topic of the week. You know, there might be some person at the very top who sets the trend and then everybody else follows. But my biggest respect goes to the people who zero in on a particular subject of importance and stick at it, you know, just dig their teeth into it and hold on. And yeah, the trials have fallen off the front page in the last 20 or so years. And they shouldn't. I mean, if the official story is correct, right? These are supposedly the guys who attacked us on that day and caused all of this chaos and harm, killed so many people. We should be following this day by day. But they don't talk about it anymore. Everyone's just moved on. But you haven't, and you've unearthed some very interesting things in doing this. So that's why I think GTMO is so important. Do you have any further comments on why this aspect of what's going on is so critical in your view?
Oh, I have much to tell you. I would like to give a little bit of an aside, because of the volunteers and myself were very closely watching what was going on. We found the document that you saw on one of the other shows that was open source, and just happened to come across it, which has specifically to do with Building 7 and the rubble. I don't know if you know about that, but it was because of that, and it was right around that time was the month that GTMO shut down because of the pandemic. That was interesting. I happened to come across that document just a couple of days before it shut down because of the pandemic. And the document, also, this was right at the exact same time that Professor Leroy Hulsey, Dr. Hulsey, finished his 4-year forensic analysis of the free fall collapse of Building 7. And so I had reached out to him at that time, and we've been great friends ever since. He had no idea what was going on in GTMO and why it could definitely affect and make a difference with some of the information that he had been studying and researching and so on. So there's pieces of this puzzle here that are coming from GTMO. You got a gold mine of information in there in public source records that you could add to it.
Well, obviously that was of great interest to me because it's regarding Building 7. So I'm going to report something to you. When I was researching this, I wanted to read the document for myself. Now, I don't know all the legalese. I'm going to openly admit I'm ignorant and I might use the wrong words here. But the defense files a motion, and they're requesting information about the debris at World Trade Center 7 and what happened with it, and the withdrawing of evidence from the site and everything. And they filed a motion, and then what you have is the government's response to it, saying, no, we're not going to give you any of that information. Now, I had paused the video and squinted because I have need glasses and haven't gotten them yet, but and read the long title of their paper.
I have it right here.
Yeah, let's go ahead and bring that up.
Well, no, I mean, I have it written right here. Now, it wasn't a matter of they were requesting information. They had the defense had all the NIST and all the information they needed. What they were requesting is the one thing that Professor Halsey didn't have either, is he did not have samples of the rubble.
That's right.
He did not have actual samples. So they, interestingly enough, after all this time, right after Professor Halsey finished his forensic analysis, they made a request to prosecution, to the government, for samples of the rubble. And the prosecution's response is, you will not have a single speck of the millions of tons of, whatever, for any type of analysis. You have all you need. In other words, you go to the NIST report, everything we provided to you, and so on. So they flat out refuse them. The answer to your question, and I'll just read this here, people may want to take notes, is the document number is AE 768A parentheses gov. And what it states is the government's response to Mr. Mohammed's motion to compel documents and information related to the government storage, transfer, or sale of 9/11 crime scene evidence. And so this is United States of America versus Khalid Sheikh Mohammed et al., etc. So that is what the document said. When I clicked on it, I expected it to be classified or redacted, and it came right up. It's like, oh my gosh.
Now, I got a question for you, because I tried to do all my due diligence in preparing today, and I found what you found, right? And I read it. But that's the government's response. Did you find the KSM defense team's filing?
No.
And I just want to report this to you because it's hard to find. And I mean, a lot of the internet's dead if you go through Google, but so I went to an alternative search site. I found the title on the page of this. I typed it in. It's really long. It takes up many rows. But there was a link that comes up, but then when you click on, I think it's the website you have ready here, the government's link, the link claims it's going to take you to the document that you're talking about. It takes you to another document now that it's like a different motion or something. So I ended up having to get it. I found it on CVine and got it from your site. But so you've got that kind of weird hanky-panky going on, but you can't even find the original filing from the defense team. Now, in the filing, it says this: this material was requested on the grounds that such debris is part of a crime scene, which Mr. Mohammed may need to investigate in order to determine the integrity of the building's construction. This information may be used as part of Mr. Mohammed's pretrial, trial, and/or mitigation case. Again, this is coming from the government right here, this part. Later it says, the only specific aspect of its case the defense gives any reason, however hypothetical, to believe may be helped by the requested discovery concerns the integrity of the building's construction, presumably to challenge the prosecution's theory that Mr. Mohammed's actions were the sole or principal cause of the property damage and resulting fatalities and personal injuries for which Mr. Mohammed is charged. Now, it is very hard to believe that they're requesting this information. And again, the Building 7 study's coming out around the same time. It's very hard to believe that the defense is requesting this information because they want to question the building's structural integrity, as if there was some kind of poor construction. They could make this put this into their case defending Mr. Mohammed. It's obvious they want to look into maybe doing the same test that Niels Harret's team did. Without talking to them directly, I can only speculate, but it's pretty good speculation. But my question is, and I know you're not the defense, you don't speak for them, but just your own thoughts.
Oh, but I know
why
the
not just come out? Why not just come out and say, look, there's a group of scientists from all over the world that says this building was brought down with explosives. We want to look into that. That is more direct in the question of KSM's guilt or innocence, or whether or not there was a bigger plot. So why not just come out and say it at this point, over 20 years later?
They have. They also, yes. They also, this is a lot deeper than you understand.
I guess
there's
so.
No way in God's little green acres I'm going to be able to cover it all. But there's more to this than you can ever possibly imagine. Okay, now I'm trying to organize in my head how to do this. First off, are you aware that right now they are in plea deals to basically, that? Okay,
yes.
Do you know why?
Well, I mean, I've seen you say on other interviews. Well, I'll let you say it. I've seen you give the answer, but I'm gonna you'll state it better than I can. So,
okay,
take the floor.
The big day happened 2 months before the big pandemic shutdown. Happened in January 2020, when there were pre-trials were in there. This was practically 18, 19 years of various saga, all culminating together in that month of the huge amount of government shenanigans and things that they were doing, of why the defense could not move forward because they were not being addressed. It's a long laundry list of things. It was the CIA and the FBI, things that they were doing, and so on. A couple of times, various different judges were ready to throw the case out of court, and so on. There was a situation where they want to give what they state is the true alleged orchestrator, that is one of the Saudi officials in Saudi Arabia. So that's just a tiny little bit of background. Now, keep in mind, if the plea deal goes through, then all this information that they have in closed proceedings that's classified will just basically be wiped off the table as irrelevant because the case is closed. So that's why they're trying to do this. Now, I'm sure you do, that pre-trials is the devil's in the details type of situation, is where it's standing. Because once it gets to tribunal, it's fast. There is a lot more going on that is being held back. And it is readily apparent as you look through the past of what's been going on and has it happened. Now, the reason I say this is important, it was Cheryl Borman, who was the head of the defense team in that January 2020, that was leading this questioning that was going on that month. Then when 2 months later, everything shut down, plus the judge quit right then you had a year and a half of shutdowns because of pandemic and etc. And then it still continued where there was a big nothing burger. So everyone basically forgets if they even heard anything. And when it did come back to start again, all of a sudden, Cheryl Borman is under investigation for improprieties. And so that's why it went to plea deal, because she basically said, I can no longer in good conscience, not protect, to defend my client with this, what is it called? This investigation going on, this cloud over my head. And so she quit. And it could take up to through using precedent almost 2 to 3 years to find somebody to replace this learned counsel, this learned attorney, to get up to speed of this very complicated things, is stretching it down more. So that's why they're going into the plea deals, which now everything is behind closed classified doors in this negotiation process that's going on. But I digress, Andy.
What was the nature of the
wanted to-
accusations against her? Like,
Pardon?
what did they try to dig? What was the nature of the
They are-
improprieties they
It's
claimed?
not being released.
Huh.
It's not being released. So if you go back to the January 2020 transcripts, which are available, or at least last time I checked, they were available on everything that it was said, because it's a matter of public record of, all the allegations. It isn't even allegations. It was all laid out in court at that time. So anyway, I wanted to explain that on why it's important for the Canestraro report, because the Canestraro report is basically forcing this into the public limelight by his report that he put out. Is it okay if I just read the very first part of the Florida Bulldog?
Please do.
So I
Please
can
do.
bring everyone up to speed if you are not aware of it. Okay, the title is Ex-FBI Agents Accuse Top CIA FBI Officials of 9/11 Cover-Up. CIA said to use Saudis and others for illegal domestic spy operations. I'm going to stop there a minute. There has been multiple times when we were listening in on these trials, it made it clear that was the case from the very beginning. That wasn't news. But because it was said so much and all this other peripheral drama is going on, people are glossing over it.
Mm-hmm.
They knew, and some of you listening right now probably remember this, that from April 2001 to October 2001, the FBI and CIA were listening in to chatter from a large multitude of sources, knowing the how, the when, the where, the why, everything that was going to happen for this attack. It was not news. They had multiple sources. They knew long before and even a month afterwards. And this came out and is in these transcripts. It's, again, nothing new. Don't you think that's kind of important to kind of keep going back? It's like my son has ADHD. Let's go back and focus to the original situation here. But anyway, sorry. Sideline. So discuss here. This was written by Dan Christensen of the Florida Bulldog. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I'm just going to read the very beginning. Weeks before 9/11, an angry New York FBI agent nearly came over the table at CIA officials who were blocking him from obtaining intelligence about two al-Qaeda terrorists who would soon take part in hijacking an American Airlines passenger jet and crashing it into the Pentagon. Someone's going to die, the counterterrorism agent wrote in a bitter email shortly after the 2001 encounter. That astonishing account and many others are contained in a sworn declaration by Donald Canestraro, an investigator for the Office of Military Commissions, part of the Department of Defense's Military Commissions Defense Organization. It is dated July 20th, 2021. Canestraro said in a brief interview with Florida Bulldog that he is part of the defense team for Guantanamo detainee Emir al-Baluchi. We like to call al-Baluchi the money man. Okay. A Pakistani citizen who is awaiting trial with 4 other men accused of planning the 9/11 attacks. His declaration includes the results of his interviews with 11 ex-FBI agents, 2 ex-CIA agents, a CNN investigative journalist, former Deputy National Security Advisor Richard Clark, and former Senator Bob Graham, Democrat, Florida, co-chair of Congress's joint inquiry into 9/11. So this 22-page declaration, first obtained by the national security website SpyTalk, is not confidential, but rather it's marked CUI, Controlled Unclassified Information. The Defense Counterintelligence and Security Agency defines CUI as government-created or owned information that required safeguarding or dissemination controls consistent with applicable laws, regulations, and government-wide policies. Okay, there's much more in this report. If you have not read it, I can send you a link, but it's fascinating. It's very well done. And the investigation that went on behind it with Conestraro is getting some very valid sources and sworn testimonies about quite a few various things. All these are going on in the trial of Gitmo that you're saying has nothing really to do with Building 7. Oh, sir, you are wrong. This has everything to do with Building 7. Building 7 is a smoking gun that they are ignoring and doing anything and everything they can to circumvent and to sensationalize it every other different direction imaginable. That's an ongoing situation, keeping things very, very quiet in the trials in Gitmo. Now, one other side note. KSM et al. Is not the only one that is in there for over 20 years in pretrials. You've got the USS Cole bombing. Okay, that happened before 9/11. They're still in pretrials. There's all these other cases that are in pretrials for over 20 years. Isn't that kind of, something that should be raising a red flag? Why doesn't anybody notice that? Bring it to the attention of what's
going on? I used to ask those questions. I don't ask those questions anymore because I've been around long enough to know how it is. I mean, I can remember before I woke up to 9/11, and the controlled demolition of the towers, they busted some guys. I think it was for they were plotting to take down the Sears Tower. And I watched this press conference with the government representative, and these guys were set up. I'm not saying that they weren't talked into some kind of stupid plot, but these guys, you listen to them, watch them. It seems like they get the IQ of spit, and you get some clever agent in there to kind of, whip them up and say, hey, we can do this stuff. And now you've got a patsy that you can put out front to the people, and some poor doofus is being paraded around and they don't even know what hit them. That's why you got to be really careful about people you let into your groups. If you're an activist organization, you get some kookball that wants to stir things up, create a January 6th type of situation or whatever. Suddenly now they've got a case against your entire organization and come after you. So yeah, I know how they operate in the media. They basically just follow talking points. So if something drops from the front page, they'll go with the new thing. And I've watched them ignore like giant protests that take place over multiple cities involving millions of people, and it maybe gets a back page mention in 2 paragraphs. They have the ability to do that, and that is just how it works. So I know the score, and I know exactly what is going on here. They're going to just keep this in perpetual pretrial until these guys die, or until something big enough happens that everyone's so distracted they don't pay attention to what the outcome is.
Well, there's one thing though that I think you may find of interest, because I was wondering, why are they allowing me to put on social media all the stuff that I am? Because an official reporter, I am not official. I am not on Guantanamo Bay. I, haven't been approved or whatever. Because if you're approved and you're actually in Gitmo or even the special room at Fort Meade for approved reporters to see the exact same thing, they are under guard wherever they go. You can't just go around Gitmo snapping pictures and, whatever in this military prison. And anything they report has got to be approved before it's released. So they are under a firmer hold than stupid little old me, who's nothing but an everyday layperson citizen, who's in the open room that is the exact same thing that they see in Gitmo, the same thing that victims and family members see also. It's the exact same thing that you can go out and put things on social media. Maybe this they feel because we don't have any credibility. Nobody's going to listen to us anyway. It's like, nah, or whatever. So I give my opinion while laying out the dots that are factual, that can be fact checked. Here's this fact, this is where you can find it, and so on and so on. And you start connecting the dots. That's nothing that, as far as I can see, anybody in mainstream media has been doing. So me being stupid and uneducated just
Well,
but
you know
I
what?
don't
I
know.
just want to tell you when I hear people talk about real reporters, I remember when I first started down this journey, and that has got me here now. I mean, I was just one of these activists on the street, but I had a website, and I was saying the same thing. Oh, I'm not a real journalist. And there was a couple that was doing the same thing. I don't know whatever happened to them, but they had a fancy camera they must have bought, and they said, "No, you are a real journalist. Don't downplay yourself, anything like that." If you think about it. Look, if you're a somewhat good writer and you're being factual in what you're presenting, you're just as good as somebody that's getting paid, $300,000 a year or whatever it is at Fox News. Probably get paid more than that. I don't even know, but whatever, getting their hair done and presenting stuff on TV, because all they're doing is a performance. It's no different than being an actor. I'm not saying they're not really who they are, but they're on there to sell a product to you. In this case, it's the product is information. That's all they do. So actually, you're more of a journalist than what you see on TV, MSNBC, Fox News, all of that. So I just wanted to say that to you, but to also the viewers out there watching us.
Well, thank you. And I actually do agree with you, because it's the volunteers, the true Americans, the what built this country, quite frankly, is we the people all coming together and just making things happen. If more people would get down to Fort Meade and watch these various different tribunals and start taking notes and start looking at this website, on the back history of it, you're going to start seeing some things. Just this last week, where they were doing the trial for the USS Cole, the multiple problems of not being able to get information out is because they classify everything, no matter how stupid, small, mundane, irrelevant. And that's why they're having such a hard time moving forward. That's one of the reasons. But I digress. Things are coming out. CVine, even though we're not an official news organization, for the last 4 years was rated, RATED, by NewsGuard. And they made it clear about what we could or could not say. And before this year, we covered a lot of different things, having to do with the health and pandemics and stuff like this. And we had on physicians and so on. The reason I'm getting off on this sideline, because it is important, specifically having to do with this, is NewsGuard was making the statement that it doesn't matter how much proof or research or peer reviews or whatever that you have to show us, if these alphabet agencies have a bottom line, okay, like NIST or whatever, this is the truth. If you tell anything other than that, you are putting out misinformation, and you are rated as putting out misinformation. And these rating agencies, after they rate you, take that rating and they send it out to big tech everywhere, to Google and so on. They will send it out to banks. They send it out to all social media. They send it out to your vendors. They make it available to everybody. And if these individuals, if you have a bad rating, do business with you, then they are come after. They come after them. They make life miserable so you cannot continue to move forward. Find advertisers if that's what you need, or whatever the case is, to be able to do any kind of funding. They constantly coming at you at every direction. Now, just the other day, I'm sure you heard, or if you haven't, I believe it was on Thursday, the House of Representatives, I don't know if you heard this, but the Pentagon was found to be funding places like NewsGuard, these rating agencies.
Oh,
Here
really?
we are covering the things in Gitmo, which were allowed to be there as part of the public, and which, is part of the DOD, obviously, and so on. And we're finding out that the Pentagon was funding the rating agency that was coming after us, telling us that we couldn't say anything except for, in the case of Building 7, what was in the NIST report. And so even though there was 3,700 licensed architects and engineers peer reviewing Dr. Halsey's research and analysis, the forensic analysis that he did, it was irrelevant to them. So we continue to have a discussion. I brought up to them this last rating. You say that it's these alphabet agencies that have the last say. What about the Office of Military Commissions regulations that clearly state that American citizens cannot be detained, tried, or prosecuted in Gitmo? And the reason I'm bringing this up, if some of you are not aware of that, there are a whole lot of various news agencies out there that are putting out incorrect information. What was some of them? Obama's begging for his life as he's being tried in Gitmo. I'm putting all this stuff and it's gone viral. That's why you hear some of these people say, they need to be Gitmo'd and etc. I ask them, with all this going on of misinformation from millions going viral to millions of people, so they think something's going on in Gitmo that is not happening, where were you? Where were you in doing anything in these individuals, being nice, that are putting out this misinformation? And I said, in case you are unaware, because you haven't done your fact checking or your researching, here exactly is the regulation. Can I read it? It's very brief.
Absolutely.
Okay. Who could be tried at Gitmo? It comes from MMC 219 edition, from Rule 202A. In general, any alien, unprivileged, enemy belligerent is subject to trial by military commission under Chapter 47A of Title 10 United States Code. Definition under Rule 103A1. Alien means an individual who is not a citizen of the United States. Definition under Rule 103A29. Unprivileged enemy belligerent means an individual other than a privileged belligerent who A, has engaged in hostilities against the U.S. or its coalition partners, or B, has purposefully and materially supported hostilities against the U.S. or its coalition partners, or C, was part of Al-Qaeda at the time of the alleged offense under Chapter 47A of Title 10 United States Code. Now, I realize that most of your audience doesn't really know what has been going on somehow over to the side here, but this misinformation has been crazy, and people don't know any different because there's no way for them to fact check this misinformation that's coming out, that in my personal opinion, I really think, especially after hearing that the Pentagon was funding NewsGuard at the tune of, I think it was $750,000 in 2021, $750,000. They're funding them to go after and silence individuals such as myself that's just reporting exactly what it is that they're putting out. And so
I'm going to look into that. I'm going to look into that because that is very of great personal interest to me. I mean, we're getting attacked all the time. It's been a steady stream of it, especially since 2015. And, you know, they do things, they'll put out misinformation. They'll try to, if they can't manage to take control of this group, they'll try to form other ones and things like this, whispering campaigns against people. And that's why I have the sympathy for this woman. I forgot her last name, but Cheryl, who is the attorney for, or was the attorney
Cheryl
for KSM,
Borman.
because it's not people in suits chasing you through back alleys and up fire escapes like in the movies. It's a constant stream of harassment, and what they do is they try to find dirt on people and try to, you know, just get rid of anybody that's causing trouble for the system and
that's right,
making things better. So no, that's right out of the playbook right there. Who's in charge of KSM's Khalid Sheikh Mohammed's defense now?
They just brought somebody else in, and I'm sorry, I don't have that answer, but I will very soon. But yes, they are doing everything. The reason I don't know is because it's all behind the scenes. It's closed doors. It's classified. Last I heard, they were waiting for Biden's approval for their latest suggestion. But the thing is, recently it came out, oh my gosh, it was in 2019 that Khalid Sheikh Mohammed stated, I will give you the name of the true orchestrator, the Saudi official of 9/11, if you take the death penalty off the table. And of course, they threw that out. They weren't interested, and so on. Well, that's what's going on now with the plea deals. The plea deals are, I will give the name of the true orchestrator if you take the death penalty off the table and give me life in prison, etc. And so that's what's going on right now. So yeah. If do you guys know who Jim Kreindler is? He's the attorney for the
families. Yeah, I do. Yeah. Oh, and I think she's frozen up here. So I'm still here. Yeah, you're talking about some important stuff, and that happens. Please continue. Oh, we're frozen again. I see you blinking though. Please continue.
Can you hear me?
I hear you. Yes.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
This is interesting. It seems to happen every time I get to this point. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Can you hear me now? Yes. Okay. So I didn't know if I was babbling to dead air here. So this happens every time I get to a certain point that all of a sudden we lose the feed. Now you're frozen. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yes.
Hello?
I can see myself moving around. Hello?
I'm here.
Okay. Can you see me moving around?
Yes. Okay, I'm going to say this real quick.
All right.
Jim Kreindler is the attorney for the victims and family members that has been trying since 2012 to get this name released that came out in federal court and then suddenly became classified. Okay, did I get it out? And
Yes.
so they've been fighting since 2012 to get this name released. Now there was a supposed leak in the news quite a few years after that. It was actually in 2019. I believe it was the Wall Street Journal that came out and said, well, we know the name, this is this name, and they came out with the name of the individual that was from San Diego, was going to be flying a plane into the towers and changed his mind and didn't do it. And they're saying he was a Saudi official. Well, if you listen to Jim Kreindler's report, okay, I had to stop it right there. The reason they kept everything in there in that interview is because every single time I'm interviewed, that particular subject matter, the exact same thing happens. I don't know if there's something in the algorithms or whatever it is, but it's interesting. I highly recommend that you go see the good people at AE 9/11, Architects and Engineers of 9/11. Huge group. They're wonderful. They do excellent work. The website is ae911truth.org, ae911truth.org. And they have quite a bit of interesting things on there you may want to take the time and the effort to look at. So if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you're not a subscriber, please subscribe. We will be back tomorrow with some more information on what is going on at GTMO.